My name is Marcia Diamond, and I'm the New Business Development with Alluserv, and I have Mike Egan, Chief Director of Design with the Sandstone Group, with us today. Little housekeeping tips. We will have the PowerPoint and our certification of attendance on the website by Monday. The recording will be available as well. If anyone has any questions throughout the presentation today, please type them in, and what we will do is, if we get some time at the end, we will answer a few. Otherwise, we will get all the questions, and Mike will answer them, and we will post them on the website. So without further ado, we'll get started. Again, welcome to our seminar today. Today you're going to take away two important things. You're going to understand the need for good and relevant function in your food service operations, and how form of your retail space is important to your customers' expectations, a reflection of your operation, and revenue possibilities. So form will reflect in your retail space to those components. Okay. And Mike will lead you into those takeaways.
Very good. Good afternoon. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for taking time out for our webinar today. Again, my name is Mike Egan. I'm Chief Director of Design for the Sandstone Group. Sandstone Group is the parent company of Alluserv. I've been with Sandstone for about 3 years now. Prior to joining the Sandstone Group, I was Vice President of Hospitality Design for a successful design consulting firm, food service design consulting firm in White Plains, New York. And today I'd like to talk to you about form and function and how we can achieve balance when designing retail food service operations. First, I'd like to talk about the definition of form and function. I know this isn't an architectural class, but I think it's important to know that when form follows function, that's really a principle that was practiced just at the turn of the century by many architects and designers, where when they designed a building or retail space or a product, they would try to design a form and function, more form than function. And what the principle is that when you design something, you focus more on the total function of it and allow the form to follow the function. So if you achieve good function, the very shape or form of the exterior actually becomes the visual excitement, and it really is the birth of modern architecture. When you look at modern architecture, the form of the buildings have taken on some very exciting skins, and hence that's when form follows function. But for purposes today, form is the shape. It's obviously the structure. It distinguishes it from its material. That could be a curved counter. The form could also be casework. It could be ceilings. It could be lighting. It could be a whole bunch of things that give a facility shape. And the function is really something that's what it's fitted or what it's used for. It's why something exists. It's why we manufacture something, or it's the purpose of what we're trying to achieve. So that's a little bit of history on form and function. And I want to give you a little bit of just something to think about. It's very simple, but as a designer, I always felt that the best designs were always ones that found some balance. That's not to say form and function are 50% exactly. It doesn't work that way. But assuming that you have a good function, form is very important. So I'm going to illustrate the example of a car wheel. You know, a wheel has been a wheel for thousands of years. But the function of that wheel, above the word function there, I show a snow tire. There's a very specific function for it. But what you can do when you modify form and function to make something a little bit more visual, something a little bit more exciting, we're able to modify the form and also enhance the function. In this case, it's a very nice-looking car tire, and the function is beautiful on it. And so this is a good way of how you can find a balance between form and function, but you're not really reinventing the wheel. It's still a wheel, it still rolls, but we have the capability of changing the form and the function of it. And you know the cliche about form and function, don't reinvent the wheel. You've heard that. And that's also very true in retail design if we're going to renovate or build a new servery. Reinventing the wheel is difficult to do, takes a lot of resources, and I'm not sure if it's possible in this case. But when we do renovate or do a new construction, it's good to work with form and function and not try to reinvent the wheel operationally. Here's another example of when form actually creates function, and I also want to talk about how consumers choose. I illustrate a very basic wooden bowl. The function of a bowl hasn't changed for thousands of years. But what I can do with this bowl to enhance the form is I can add some color, some shape, a polished edge, and I haven't impacted the function at all. The function is 100% in the bowl on the right, but I was able to add some form that made it very, very attractive, yet I didn't impact the function of it. So the bowl isn't reinvented, it's just the form and how it complements the function. I want to talk about form versus function in food service and how the functionality is very, very important. And I narrowed it down to two very specific things that an operator needs. And it really comes down to adequate space, which is the the function of how we operate, and then the retail space itself and the functional equipment. There are many things food service operators need in order to function. There's labor issues, there's food cost issues, and many other challenges, but for purposes of this demonstration, functions should be one of the most important things. And we need adequate space in order to store, prep, assemble, and serve product. We need work aisles that work. We have ergonomics, time motion, are employees walking too far to assemble menu items? Are things just not working well? So when we have adequate space, we're able to function very, very well. The other component, assuming we have a retail space that is got plenty of room to work, it's adequate space, we need to fit equipment in there that's functional. And I think that's a very big problem in our industry today is many operators are forced to work with equipment that doesn't have the right capacity. Refrigeration always seems to be a deficiency, storage. So I think having the right capacity of the food service equipment is critical to the functionality. Also equipment that provides multiple functions. This is very important to how we function successfully as well. Turbo Chef, combi ovens, hot cold pans. I'll go through all of these very quickly. A Turbo Chef is a countertop appliance that was designed to be an oven with convection capability. It also broils and has microwave capabilities as well in one small footprint, specifically designed to provide multiple functions in one small space. Combi ovens, another excellent piece of multiple function equipment. Many people are familiar with those. They were specifically designed to provide multiple functions with the use of steam and how they can roast meats, how they can proof, and also hot and cold pans. Think about a hot food well that with the flip of a switch could be converted to a refrigerated cold pan. All of these multiple functions allow you to have menu flexibility and function very, very well in your operation. Holding temperatures for equipment is also very vital. We all need equipment that's going to hold hot, hot, and cold, cold. But for example, the frost top seems to be, in some locations, a popular piece of equipment that looks nice to some designers, but it may not be very practical or functional when you think about its inability to hold an NSF7 temperature requirement, or my inability to install deep well food pans or something where I want to increase my capacity. So we need to think about multiple function pieces of equipment and whether they hold our temperatures properly and if they work well. Cleanability, serviceability, these are all very important things that impact the functionality of our equipment. So I think in summary, this really represents adequate space to function, and if we have the right equipment to function, whether it has the right capacity. Those are the two most important things to a food service operator. This is a typical plan of a space that we're working with a consultant on. And what I wanted to highlight was an overview of how the back-of-house kitchen support area needs to be sized enough to be able to support the function of the retail space, obviously. You can see how there's plenty of refrigerated space, dry storage space, there's counter space, and it's a very good example of how this facility functions. On the bottom left of the drawing, you'll see the retail area. I'd add a little color there, and we'll get into that in a moment. But this is a typical urban hospital location. They do have outside retail choices, so it is in a competitive environment, and they need to retain as many people as they can through retail. The feeding population is about 600 to 800 a day, and they also have a lunch pickup option, which I'll talk about later. But again, I think it represents how the operation, how it functions, and we have adequate space to support what we're looking to do in retail. Here's the same drawing, and I enlarged this a little bit to kind of highlight a little bit more focus on what the retail space will look at. And I personally think this is a great layout because operators can enter on the top section of the servery, and they've got plenty of room to navigate. They've got plenty of room to look around and say, okay, look at all my choices. To the left, they've got grill stations. They've got soup stations. A little bit further down, there's a cold station. So I think from a circulation perspective, it works very, very well. It functions well. And regarding equipment and how that functions very well, on the top left of that drawing, you'll see a wok station, 6-burner range, and a griddle. And this equipment is used not only to cook made-to-order pieces for people that want that, but they're also able to cook to demand. So they can cook a certain quantity of hot product, lay it out on some nice hot plates and roasting pans, and limit the quantities instead of using, an average 12 by 20 food pan that sits in a hot food well. Here's an alternative way that they can enhance the retail experience and utilize the equipment behind the line, and also address the 5 senses that we're all looking for in our retail experiences. Another point I wanted to look at here was in the back portion of that area, you'll see a pizza oven. And that pizza oven is strategically located in a spot where obviously they make a pizza program, but it's also near the sandwich area where the operator could melt cheese. They could grill sandwiches, very similar to a Quizno. So it's another good example of not only do they have a functional space, but their equipment serves multiple functions. And they're able to expand their menu choices and enhance the service levels they can to their guests. So this is a good representation of how you can find good functionality. So let's get into the form of the space. This is a CAD rendering that many designers are able to provide you or the end user so that you get an opportunity to see how the form of the space complements the function. This is an actual rendering of that space we just looked at. It's a work in progress. There isn't any signage, but you can kind of get a sense of space in here and how exciting it will be for the customer to come in and have that retail experience. The ceiling's got some nice coppered lighting, some curved walls. I think the flooring is kind of an industrial vinyl wood simulated floor, which is very, very pretty. But you can see that they're doing something that's very untraditional and very exciting. They're also using Korean countertops. This view is looking into the, at the very end where you see those black lights. That's the grill station. That's where you're coming in and you have all that hot food near you. So a good example of how form can complement your function. Sometimes form drives function, and what I mean by that is, as a designer in the past, occasionally you're asked to design a retail space in an area that just doesn't have enough space. It's the old proverb of, 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound bag. But insufficient space is a result of a number of things. If it's a new construction, it could be the building program. There's many different components that make up the building, and food service gets X, and you have to work with what you have. Sometimes there are structural elements, columns, stairways, elevator cores that make the space hard to work. And in other locations, particularly in existing ones, there's some operations where they'd love to renovate, but they're really landlocked. Their 4 walls is what they own, and there's just no way to expand it to make the improvements you need in your retail space. So I think it's important that if you're renovating or building a new location, that you identify when that happens and find alternatives. And you do have some. The designer should be able to design the retail space and size it accordingly, and perhaps there are some spaces behind the scenes, the support kitchen, where maybe that becomes a little bit smaller, and maybe some of the dry storage or the disposable takeout storage units, they all go to a different level in the building, or maybe they go down the hallway. I know it's in the real world that's not always possible, but we need to make sure that the retail space is adequate to serve the population and maybe find alternatives to where other service components can go, as an alternative. The other thing is thinking vertical. Particularly in the retail space, there are countertop appliances such as a microwave, or perhaps that Turbo Chef oven that I was talking about that could easily be wall mounted. And what that does is it frees up your counter space so you could have more prep or assembly area. Another great use of wall space is you could create a very visual bread display. Looks great on the wall. They could be in bins, and maybe that bread, the previous location of the bread, could be used for more refrigerated storage or some other alternative use. So I think in those rare occasions where if the form or your space is inadequate and you can't function, it's important to identify it and find alternatives so that you don't build something that you have to live with for 20 years and have to deal with it. Hence the comment about long lines and how they could have 2 different meanings. We've all been on long lines at retail locations where the food is delicious and it's a new venue and it's a very exciting event, but most of the time it's really a long line indicates that there's probably a function problem. There's something about the operation that can handle the population, even particularly in captive audiences. So long lines could mean that there's an undersized space and undersized equipment. Let me talk a little bit about what our customers expect. And I think for the most part, customers were all purchasers of products. We expect form. We like form. We like shape. I think quality of food, value, and service. Those are all very important things. But when we expect form, and let me talk about the purchasing habits that we have. We as consumers, when we need to find something, we look for functionality and a purpose of something. So we'll narrow it down and try to find products that satisfy our purpose. So if we go to a store and we're looking for a pair of shoes, an electronic device, or an appliance or an automobile, very often we'll narrow our choice down to the functionality. But notice how many times we're influenced by the form of the choices we have. Sometimes we're influenced by the color, the handle, where the switch is, how something works, but a lot of times it's just something about the look of that product that makes us select it and maybe pay even more for it. So that's why form is very important to our customers, and the same thing holds true in our retail spaces. Stimulation of the senses. Very important. We have 5 senses, and if we add action and activity, aroma, smell, we can hear the sizzle. These are all very important things that our customers are expecting in retail. They also want up-to-date settings and a retail experience, and I'll give some examples of that shortly. But they all, our customers eat outside of our facilities, and they know what experiences they're looking for. Easy to read menus are very important. Some good signage. Nothing's more frustrating when you see a new facility open and a customer comes in and they don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. So they spend time kind of walking around the facility looking for direction. They can't navigate. And then when they do get somewhere, it could be, what is it? What am I looking at? What is the menu? Is it something on an 8.5 by 11 photocopy as a menu board, or is it something more like a digital screen that someone can look at that's a little bit more exciting? Enhanced merchandising, that's something else that our customers expect. We could probably do an entire webinar on merchandising and how we do that. But, great ways of doing that is with lighting and appetizing food displays. So let me give you a couple of examples of what I'm talking about. I had gone through my photo archives of existing locations, and here's a very typical setting of a hot station in a cafeteria. It's all stainless steel, very institutional, tubular tray slides. The food guards are very institutional, but also looking at the food display itself, they're standard food pans with bent edges, very little garnish, there's no props, there's nothing very exciting about it. But with Alluserv's equipment capabilities, we're able to take this and create something like you see there that would have wonderful food display. The food's angled. We're using more modern food guards, solid surface tray slides that could be a Corian or a granite, and more combinations of plastic laminates that kind of make the facility look a little bit more like an upscale retail environment. You'll also notice that there's pin lights that come down. There's a couple of lights that illuminate the food, and of course there's heat lamps. But all these kind of things are ways that you can take something that's very common and create something that's very, very visual that our customers expect, and it improves our sales and does a number of things. Here's another example of a cold display. The top left corner shows a photograph of a cold pan. I want to note that that's ice cold. It's not refrigerated, so its ability to function is questionable. But again, it's a good example of an older facility that needs to be renovated and upgraded to something that's a little bit more of a pleasant retail experience. The photograph I'm showing here shows how the industry trend is using more of a vertical glass. You're seeing very, very little curved food guards. You'll notice the hardware that holds that glass together. These posts are very, very slim, very unobtrusive, so that we show more of the food product. There's white food pans being used. Of course, there's black and some other combinations. But you can see how the food presentation is radically improved just by using more current, up-to-date materials that are available to the marketplace. I want to point out, too, that the countertop is stainless steel, but as a cost precaution, the tray slide is Corian. The entire counter does not have to be Corian. We just kind of added an accent of Corian, and of course there's laminated panels. So these are two good examples of how we could very quickly improve existing retail experiences and enhance that merchandising experience. Let's talk about what our customers experience. And I'm sure we're all have been customers of Starbucks. But the reason why I picked Starbucks was, even though they are predominantly a coffee company, and they do have some other accompaniments to their menu, it's a good example of form and function, how it works well, and how hard they work at it. I've been in Starbucks, and some of you may have also, on a Saturday morning where you've got a line up to the cash register, and some of these stores even have a takeout pickup window. And I've always been impressed on how quickly the line moves. And that tells me, and I'm very familiar with their layouts as well, but they have well-designed facilities. Their equipment has the right capacity. So as far as functionality, Every store is just like a clock, and it's really fine-tuned, and they're able to move people through with very little delay. And talking about how form complements the function, they do a great job with menu boards, lighting. They use great earth tones, nice laminates in stone, wood floors. Their ceilings are beautiful. They have graphics. They even play music in the background. So all of this is intended to make it a personal retail experience for everybody that comes in there. And I think you'll agree they do a great job in doing that. So this is the kind of stuff that retail food service is going in. This is the direction that we see it going in. But they do a wonderful job, so it's great form and function. Here's a photograph of an actual healthcare facility, and I need to ask where the form is. And again, it's easy to be critical when you walk into a space with a camera. There may be some financial constraints, but assuming that this cafeteria line works, even though it's a straight run, it's not a scattered design that's most desired. But there's absolutely no form, there's no color, there's no graphics, there's no lighting. It's a very uninviting retail experience. And I think what could happen is this space could easily be transformed, or I'm calling it a transformation. And this is a good representation of what Alluserv can do. You'll see there's a big difference between, this photograph of what's existing and something a little bit more exciting, just by working with different colors and finishes, and how we could add functional retail display pieces, and how this type of servery could certainly boost sales and revenue and give the customer a much better retail experience. You'll also notice they did some different tile work. They did some floor treatments out front. I'm not sure if white was the final color. That would be a maintenance issue. But also the ceiling has got some playful things going on. So it's just another example of how you can transform something that lacks form into something that has formation. Here's another example of that a facility didn't use the best form, and again, I want to talk about, I understand the challenges that food service operators have. So again, it's easy to be critical and throw a photo up here, but I think it's a good example of how we can get complacent, and this certainly functions. There's no question that this table and the condiment pumps function well, but it's a perfect opportunity to introduce form, and I think in this case, a better way of doing this would have been going to Pier 1 Imports or Crate and Barrel and getting a baker's rack or something to just kind of put it up against that building column. And I think it's important that we walk around our facility on occasion and, from our customers' eyes and see what may be out of place or something that may bring down that retail experience a little bit too much. The other good thing about this slide, and I hope some of you can relate to this powder blue and oak trim is very representative of mid-'80s. Some of you may have the same finish with a rose color plastic laminate. For some reason, these two colors were very popular. But this facility manages to do the best they can with what they have. But what I wanted to show was how it could also be transformed into something a little bit more exciting, a little bit more in line with the retail experience that our customers want. You'll see again there's great use of the vertical glass over each workstation. There's little pin lights coming down from the top. The visual display of food is much more apparent than more traditional or industrial food guards. So it's come a long way in how we can merchandise food product. A little bit of floor treatment, natural wood along the front with a little solid surface material, and a little bit of tile on the background can do wonders to any facility. You may see, and I pointed out ceilings in earlier renderings, and you may see some other more ornate ones, but this particular facility, because of budget constraints, had used a 2x2 suspended ceiling. So not every operation needs to have coffered lighting and very expensive sheetrock and all these other things. There's a lot of things you can do with a little bit. I want to talk about what the leaders know. And again, I'm going to single out somebody that does form and function very well, and they tap the expectations of the customer in a great, great way. And again, I'm going to go back to the philosophy of when I go to Panera Bread and I walk in and I get this wonderful baked product right in my face, it makes me want to buy all of it because they just do a very, very nice job. Again, this is, you know, a baked good product that sells sandwiches, but again, what we could learn from other people and what they do, Starbucks and Panera, or B&I facilities, or other healthcare facilities that were recently renovated, and they've got some exciting new things to do. There's a lot that we can learn from how they do it. Panera is another one that functions very, very well. You could have lines at lunchtime, but boy, they move really quick. And that's because they have the right capacities and their equipment is well laid out, well thought through. And then they take the form and they create some very, very nice spaces. They have excellent lighting and signage. They use black metals with wood. They add fireplaces and all these other great things that make that experience so special, and it keeps people coming back. I'd like to show you another example of form and function working in harmony. This is a Healthy Trends Cafe that is part of the Alberta Health Services up in Alberta, Canada. And this concept, Healthy Trends, was developed by Khalid Khan, who's Director of Retail Services, and his staff. And they did an absolutely wonderful job in how they find the balance between form and function, specifically in a healthcare setting. This Healthy Trends Cafe received the 2010 AHF Spotlight Award for Program Development, Innovation, and Effective Use of Technology. And I couldn't have said it better, but form and function working in harmony for successful outcomes was from one of their press releases. So it was a pleasure to view some of their facilities. I'll tell you a little bit about it very quickly. They base their menu on fresh food choices because they want to address the healthy, conscious consumers. The concept is built on healthy, nutritious menu items. They use low-fat, sodium products, heart-healthy oils. They have portion control for weight-conscious patrons. They use fruit, vegetables, whole grains, and spices to enhance their menu. And they use sustainable food practices, organically grown product, and it just goes on and on. But in addition, they also have espresso, coffee, baked goods, flat screen televisions, very interesting textures, finishes, and I'll show you another photograph of that. This is a close-up of their display case that I particularly liked. You'll see that they're doing daily specials, but they're using real props that they actually use in their menu. So they're not buying this stuff and throwing it out. It's actually used in their production. But they've got whole mushrooms, peppers, onions, pineapples, oils, spices. They do a wonderful job merchandising some of their products for sure. The other photograph in the bottom right shows the digital menus and how well they're displayed. Digital menus have come down a lot. The technology is a lot more affordable than in past years, and it also enables the operator to make menu changes and offer different slides to kind of add some animation to the space. They also do a great job with baskets and wireframes. They add some shape and contour. So it's a good example of form and function. One other slide I want to show is good form and function. This is the Children's Hospital in Calgary, Alberta. And this Easy Trends component was dropped in the middle of an existing cafeteria. But what I wanted to highlight again was not only is there excellent signage and identification, but people come into the space, and the first thing you see is that air curtain refrigerator. It's well lighted. The product is balanced out, so that's very colorful. It wasn't overstocked, and it wasn't understocked. It just looked, very, very nice. It was easy to reach in and grab a product. But by the shape of the counter, there was plenty of space to move around it, plenty of circulation, and I just think it was a great example of how form and function work together. Okay. So in summary, I think it's important that form follows the function. And I thought I gave some pretty good examples of that, but we need to also find the balance and recognize when function is compromised. If these things aren't addressed early on, they become a real difficult situation to fix later, particularly for those facilities that are going to renovate and they don't have the space to expand. It's important to be very clever about how you handle and keep the facility functioning and not compromise the retail experience. Also see your operation from the customer's perspective. I think occasionally it's good to see how people are doing things outside and some easy ways we could enhance current means and methods to keep that retail experience on its top notch. Okay. Also getting inspired by those who do it best. I think that that is something that's very important. I do it. Design consultants do it. Other competitors do it. Everybody looks at how other people are doing things so that you can learn and find the best way of doing things. Partnering with suppliers, business partners, a very good source of information. And also working with an experienced design team. It's important that when you work with a design consultant that they understand the importance of function and form, and maybe look at some of the facilities that they've done or some photographs, because the success of your project is directly hinged upon who your team that our next webinar on October 22nd at 4 p.m. That's Eastern Daylight Time. We're going to sponsor another webinar called Approaching Your CEO for Capital. So you may find that very interesting and informative on how you could secure funding for some of these suggestions we've made. Anyway, I do hope you all enjoyed my presentation, and I hope you've gained a new.
Mike?
Yeah.
We have a couple of questions. I think we have a few minutes, so I will take them.
Okay.
All right. Couple of questions, and one of the questions was, give me a second. We have a question that says, it is, can you comment on having retail entrance and retail exits separated and the incidence of pilferage versus designing them together so there is some ability to provide a cashier presence to deter pilferage? I'll repeat the question.
Yep.
Can you comment on having retail entrance and retail exits separated and the incidence of pilferage versus designing them together so that there is some ability to provide a cashier's presence to deter pilferage?
Yes, I can, and I've seen the entrances be separate from exits, and I've also seen them combined. So to your point, you can control the pilferage. But a lot of times, and again, going back to space, it's driven by what's available and how you can circulate people through the facility. But I do think it's a good idea that cashiers, their sight lines are in line with where the patrons are, so you can limit pilferage. Unfortunately, it does occur. But yeah, there's been a lot of pros and cons about that, and I think in some cases some other operators would like a more prominent display or more of a prominent entranceway, and then their exit may wrap around towards the dining room. So in some cases it's not physically possible. But I think in any case, whenever you can get a cashier or have that sight line more open to prevent pilferage, I think it's a very good idea to do that when you can.
Another question, one other question, and is I have found that the solid surface counters with the SS slats to be a sanitation nightmare. Please comment on the use of these versus leaving it a solid flat surface so that it is easy to quickly clean the surface.
Yeah. What was the material?
The material was SS slats.
SS flat.
SS slats, that's all. Oh, stainless steel slats.
Oh, okay. Well, I can tell you, I'm not sure I understand the specific application, but there are differences, and it's a very good question. When you use a solid surface manufactured or cultured stone, they tend to be more sanitary than a natural stone like granite and marble. So products like corian, meganite, any of those resin products are sanitary and cleanable. They do stain, but they are repairable. I think the biggest concern to watch out for with solid surface material is the cracking around hot food pieces of equipment, which is more of a concern for me. But I understand that most of the solid surface materials, other than stainless steel, are acceptable for use and are sanitary with normal use.
And does that affect form versus function in any way?
No, I don't think so. I think the cultured or resins that are made by DuPont and some of the other manufacturers actually enhance the function and the form as well. They're very malleable products. They're very easy to shape with seamless applications, so you can have a continuous flow of counter without seams, which is more hygienic. So it is a good product to create form, and it is very functional.
Thank you. The other questions, anyone has any others, we'll send them in and we will post them on the website. The PowerPoint will be available next week. If you have any other questions about any other challenges, we have on the Alluserv website, Ask the Expert. And Mike Egan is one of our experts, so he'd be more than happy to answer that on the site. If you want to forward your questions via email, it's marciadiamond@gmail.com, or for more information, you can contact the Alluserv website or directly to us. Hopefully you've walked away with understanding form versus function and how it can enhance customer perception, generate revenue possibilities, and give you an operation that has designed better and will perform better as well. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Mike, thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.